Welcome everybody to this week's Voices from the Past. We're looking at the Codex Gigas, also known as the Devil's Bible. Now, I've chosen this for a specific reason. There is a massive amount of internet information, articles, written stuff. When you look at it, why I actually went to explore this in the first place was a few years back. There were all of this Satanist stuff about it, and I thought, what the heck is this Devil's Bible? Is it something that's been written by Anton LaVey, or what's the story here? And then when I went and had a look, it had nothing to do with the devil, people. So all of those articles are bogus, bollocks. They don't know what's in it. They're just going, it says the Devil's Bible. The most published picture out of it is a picture of the devil that's in it. But it is so much more. It is an exciting, it's incredible, actually. So we are going to look at it for that reason. It is the single largest manuscript ever written, first and foremost. It's possibly one of the strangest manuscripts ever written as well in the world. It is so large, are we ready, that it is said to have taken more than 160 animal skins. This is it there, 160 animal skins to make it, and take at least two people. It takes nowadays two people to lift it, at least two people to lift it, and it measures approximately 1 meter in length. That's in height, actually. And I didn't get the depth of it. I should have, because it was written around there somewhere, but this is a man in relation, so you get an idea of how big this thing is. This was taken some time back. So it's an enormous it's huge. It's enormous. It's handmade, handwritten, and all of those pages are animal skin. And so look how fine they are. They're beaten fine, or whatever they do, stretched fine, beaten fine, a combination of all of those. Then, of course, they've got to make it so you can write on it. And later on, I will be showing you some of that writing. It's like perfection. So it didn't happen in a second. You know what? If you take lines off me, I always tend to write in a slant. I don't know what you guys do. You know, whether you have this as a problem for you or what, but I always end up I start off okay, and then I end up with this kind of writing that ends up at the line itself ends up on this slight angle, and it just sort of gets more and more pronounced. So I have this radius. If you looked at it from a distance, it would be a bit of you have to turn the page sideways. Imagine a book this big, right? Having to do that. Now, I can only imagine that it was assembled after it was written, but I'm not so sure whether it was just added to an editor, because later on we'll talk about that. But are you left-handed then, turning your page sideways? I'm thinking about that because I've seen people do that before. Are you left-handed? Is that why? You're right-handed and do that. Okay, that's interesting. According to legend, and there is some legend around it, it was written in medieval times, by the way, was made out of a pact with the devil, but I'm reasonably sure that that's also come out at a lot later date, which is why it is sometimes referred to as the Devil's Bible. And why we've got that in there, there's also a reason why even that started. It was written in Latin during the 13th century AD, that is 1200 and something. And although the origin of the manuscript is unknown precisely, there's a little conjecture around that, a note in the manuscript states that it was pawned in the monastery of Sedlec in 1295. Pawned, mind you, pawned. So they take this amazing artifact, and the church, the monastery, pawns it. The Codex Gigas, which just means, by the way, giant book, which it is, it's a giant book, contains a complete Vulgate Latin translation of the Bible, as well as 5 other major texts. And we'll give you another sticky beak at it here. Look at the size of that thing. When you look at it, you just got to, at some point, pay attention to this item, because it's enormous. Now, I'm sure that guy's a little bit short as well, but it's a meter high, which is just over 3 feet, or just on 3 feet high. So the average person, if it was me, I would probably look not too different to this guy. So I'd say he was a little bit shorter, but at the same time, it's a pretty big book. Or the measurements are a little bit under, because that looks closer to, maybe a meter, arm's length, isn't it? Yeah. So a meter high. It's on the table. Oh, yes, there's that as well. All right, yes, of course. silly me, was actually sort of thinking in relation to his the size of his leg. See over here? It looks pretty skinny. And we're before the age of, random and fancy filters and things like that. This complete translation of the Bible, as well as 5 other major texts, it begins the Old Testament, which is phenomenal in itself. So he's writing or recording. He didn't write the Old Testament, but he's recording it. And, of course, this gives us some insight into how the Bible changed or how things got taken, because we were looking last week and we looked at the original manuscripts, the tablets of the Book of Giants as part of these tablets, where there are whole chapters that were written well before the Bible was compiled, where certain things mirror something that's been written later in the Bible, where the original wasn't written, as if they're separate chapters, but they were the visions actually of, I've forgotten his name. Enoch. We've got it. It's back. So it's quite an interesting thing. It continues with the Antiquities of the Jews, which was written originally by Flavius Josephus. So there's nothing really original in here. He's compiled a whole pile of books, because that was written in the 1st century AD. The Old Testament, of course, was written a very long time ago, but this Flavius Josephus writing was written about 200 years, maybe 150 to 200 years before it was recorded here in the Devil's Bible. And there's also Isidore of Seville's Encyclopedia Etymology, which we will talk about later, and a collection of medical works of Hippocrates, Theophilus, and others. So he's compiled, really, this book. That's why I put in my promotion of this show that it was really perhaps the first almanac. There's calendar in it. There's stuff. And he finishes it with the Chronicle of Bohemia, which means, as we know, for him to even consider putting that in, that it's got a Czechoslovakian origin is the most likely source, of course. Smaller texts are also included in the manuscript, with the most famous ones including text on exorcism, magic formulas, a picture of the heavenly city. No kidding. We'll look at that too in a little bit more details. A full-page illustration of the devil, which is what I think is the basis of the whole Devil's Bible thing, because a lot of people that can't read Latin jump to conclusions. The illustration is the reason why the legend says the Codex was written with the devil's help, but it's sort of an odd legend, considering what's in it, the Bible. You go, okay, we've got the whole Bible, Old and New Testament in there, and then what have we got going on? Oh, we've also got going on this idea that it's a devil's Bible. Now, bearing in mind that the New Testament is written after, was put together, if you like, or the Bible as we know it was put together by Constantine prior to this medieval time. So a very interesting work indeed, and why it was compiled. Nobody really knows. There's a mystery to why you would spend the time doing this. It's certainly not the only written record of these things. They were all previously written by others. One could say it's a plagiarized book. In general, one could very much say that. But it's clearly a labor of love. It's clearly something that you can go online and you can see videos of it. They've got, because it's in the Swedish Library, the National Library of Sweden, you can see the actual book being handled, open. This is another picture of it under the lights. You see, it can't be opened without the support. See the support under it so that it doesn't break, or so it takes its weight. I never got an actual weight for it. I should have done that, because it would be incredibly heavy if you've got a minimum of 2 people to lift it at any time. The outside cover is made of wood, both ends, and that's, if we go back to the first image here, that's wood. And it's got metal spikes in it, very reminiscent of modern grimoire type things, of special books anywhere. You've got this wooden protection, and the back is a loose so it can be opened. It's a loose material that they're all sewn into, very old style, of course, also very brilliant. Now, there's some interesting stuff around this book that goes beyond even all of these things that we're looking at. So we're back up now. Now, when you have a look at it, the enormity of the job of putting this together, and then nobody knows whether the person who wrote it put it all together himself. It's quite a phenomenon. There's no doubt about it. It is considered the largest manuscript ever written, and that includes modern day. So it's a fascinating thing. Now, here's the picture. Here's the offending picture. That it got its name, the Devil's Bible, is pretty generally accepted that the illustration of this devil, which is on page 290, and it's right at the very center of the book. There's the devil on this side, and it's believed that it's the only Bible of its era that depicts an image of the devil, which is in itself interesting, or Satan, I should say, of Satan. It's essentially one of those amazing, amazing things that it's a collection of a number of secular works. It's an encyclopedia of medieval knowledge and understanding because the way it's written, but it also has been haunted by a little bit of dark speculation. And again, we don't know how much of that's because of this image that's in there and rumor and, medieval times, let's face it, through Elizabethan times, through the times of King Henry VIII, all of those people there's a lot of superstition going on, but there was a lot of fabrication as well. It was in the interest of the church, it was in the interest of royalty to scare the bejeebers out of the general public. But the general public would never be exposed to something like this, and this is important to understand. It wasn't written for the general public. Nothing was written for the general public. So then it becomes a question of who was it written for? Why was it written? And what was the record supposed to be expressing or sharing? At this point, you've got published works that were copied and written, because that's how anything got multiple copies. Back in the day, somebody had to copy it. So there were multiple copies of just about everything, including the Bible. That being the case, it wasn't recorded necessarily to save it, if you know what I mean. It seems like, as we get through this, that it's a compilation, that the idea is that all of these things that are in it work together and provide anybody that reads it with an insight into this era and the way that things are recorded. The very least, it is the most amazing thing to look at. Once you start getting into the scribes of the medieval times, they were just beautiful. Our biggest problem with the devil here, of course, is he looks a bit more like a cartoon character and an ermine diaper. That's ermine, by the way, and an ermine diaper rather than evil incarnate. When you think about what's the most horrible thing you could imagine, and you look at this and it's like, no, that's not it. And no, that's not it. He does look rather funny. He's got a green face, a white body. He's got orange horns. He's got, what's that on his head? I mean, goodness me. Let's have a closer look at this, shall we? Because it really is it looks almost like, I don't know, maybe scales, like fish scales, sort of like they're gone for the reptilian look, right? And that begs the idea of coming forward, that actually this devil has a bit more. When you look at his claws, and if you go through here, you look at his face, see these fangs, that they look like there's insects that have them, right, that come out the front like that. They clench like crabs, if you like, but they're not. There's insects that, like wetters, they have these little wee out of their mouth. So it's almost like he's taken a compilation of things he's seen in real life, like lizards. And if you could look at this, you could almost imagine that this is where dragons come from, because dragons as an illustration, a supernatural illustration, is a fairly modern idea. So when you start looking at things like this, you go, well, maybe, and drawing skills aside, everything's quite well proportioned, but he has a very human-like face in amongst all of this other stuff. He has a human-like body, but he has the claws of what would be an animal, right? When you see a bird, actually 3 claws with an opposing grip, that's a bird's claw, isn't it? And so we've got this compilation, and the nappy thing just does my head in. It's pretty hard to be concerned about that, but clearly it's also hiding his nether regions. Is that animal's head to the right of his face? Where are we looking here? This here is his claws. It's like a bird's claw. I'm not sure what you're asking about there. Other side? Oh, the left, you mean? The other right? That's a claw as well. And this is, you can see the markings of the writing from the scan on the other side of the page, by the way. That's all that is. Did you see what you were trying to talk about? So it's two claws, the face in the middle. There's his body. He's even got, indications of the belly right beside his face. No, there's nothing there. It's just what's coming through on the page from the scan. So when they scanned this whole book in, the scans are intense light, so you can actually see the writing on the other side, which when you look at the pages open, you can't. So that's just one of those little tricks, and it's old. This is actually not paper either. This is animal skin, thought to be donkey skin too, by the way. So we come down to the nappy, right? Ermine nappy. Now only royals wore ermine, around the collar. You may have, that's how they know what it is. It's seen many times in drawings where it's the white fur with the little dots on it, which is ermine, which is an animal. And so we've got something here that's alluding to the fact that he's the Prince of Darkness, I guess. And then we've got these foot claws, which are really like chicken's feet, aren't they? Let's get real here. Our devil's not exactly the most imposing creature around, which makes him a little bit tricky to be scared of. But this is how he was depicted. He's crouching, and this is how he's described, by the way. Not in the Gigas. This is how others have described him. He is crouching with his arms held up. He has only 4 fingers and toes, which are more like claws. The ermine, which is usually associated with royalty, and its use here is to emphasize the position of the devil as the Prince of Darkness. That's what a scholar came up with. Boo-hoo. And they couldn't even say talons, and they couldn't even say claws. They had to say fingers and toes, which was totally, misleading, misrepresenting. And, of course, it is opposite the page that is the City of Heaven. So we'll talk about that later as well. So you've got the city, there it is. The City of Heaven on one side, that's on the left, and on the right is the devil. So in the center of the book, you open it out, you've got this picture here on the left, and you've got the devil on the right. And if you have a look at this, it's quite an interesting thing. So it's actually a city. You see all the houses? In the City of Heaven, it's actually a city. There are pillars. It's not particularly lovely, but it's there. Obviously, you go up. Look at these sort of areas that are like castles, aren't they? They're like towers of a castle, and they go up to the next level. Now, does this look like the old, what were they called? Luigi, what was that game called from, you know who I mean, eh? Luigi and, they'd go do. And they'd bounce from one spot to the next, and then they'd go up, and they'd end up on top of something. They'd go along the next one, and they'd have to jump or do something to get up the next one. I can't even remember what his Xbox game it was. Anyway, I hope I get some money for that promotion. Mario Brothers, that's what it was called, but not the more modern one, but way back, the early one, and it was always those sort of sounds. So this is what this looks like to me. So it's like nothing's new, is it? As soon as you start looking around at something pretty old, you go, oh yeah, maybe somebody had seen that, because that's the look that it's got exactly. No people in there. There are just houses and orange brick walls, and these towers connecting them together like the towers of a castle. Pretty phenomenal. That's what it looks like from the front or from the side. Now, the following pages of the devil, after you get past the devil, the following, we're right. The following pages are detailed instructions for the exorcism of demons or evil from people and objects. There are also 2 magic spells, by the way. Both are specific instructions on how to identify and catch a thief, which I think is pretty awesome, you know. It's what we all want to do with a spell. We want to catch a thief. Now, these images that you're looking at, I just want to remind, these are handwritten, hand everything. And it's phenomenal. See these details of these pictures. Now you see pictures like that today, and you've got these spiritual impressions going on that seem to mimic, you know, see the old girls, you know, it's all the same stuff, isn't it? The 3 leaves up here, they're all ancient symbology, and we need to start remembering that that's the case. As you look at it, see this comes forming this beautiful trumpet out the side of it. And again, we've got, look at those figure 8s, the serpentine figure 8s with the choker-ray imagery, if you like, or what's called choker-ray. We've got the triad here as well. It's just phenomenal to look at and to know that this is something that we to this day see as special, and we carry this energy through regardless. But anyway, we've got 2 magic spells, one for catching a thief, not for stopping the theft, but to catch the thief. Possession by demons is commonly thought of during medieval times. People got burned for it. They got killed for it. They thought that if anybody was incredibly ill, or if they turned into a nutter, if they went batty, it was considered an actual fact that they were inhabited or possessed by the devil. Children that were born with afflictions were considered to be possessed by the devil, and very often in medieval times weren't allowed into townships. So these were beliefs from that time. The church had specific rituals to exorcise evil by casting demons out of an afflicted body, which is fascinating in itself. And according to the Christian New Testament, for those that want to down and diss everybody that believes in this stuff or that gets into a bit of witchy stuff or whatever, Jesus gave his disciples the power to cast out evil, which is why scholars believe the medieval exorcists commanded demons to leave an afflicted person's body in the name of Jesus Christ. So they would invoke Jesus Christ's name in a spell, in an invocation, the same as maybe the Romans would have earlier, or the Greeks with gods and goddesses. All that happened was the name changed. It needs to be looked at. A conjuration is what they are called in the book. A conjuration is a religious or magic formula presumed capable of preventing or overcoming evil, misfortune, and disease. The conjuration is considered to give a person pronouncing it power and dominion over spirits, evil beasts, and such like, and to afford protection from witchcraft. Interestingly, medieval times, because it wasn't really called that earlier. In medieval times, conjurations were used in many different connections, both within the church and outside it. Are we clear? So when we've got that and we're thinking on that, when we're talking about protection from witchcraft, we're talking about witchcraft protecting from witchcraft. So what we're really looking at here is there are spells to protect you from the bad stuff. Very clear, in the church and out of it, not just a separation thing that, you know, you get a few people going on about today, which is just mind-boggling to me. All through the Bible, there's magic, there's prophecy, but suddenly it's evil. Curious and curiouser. So the first conjuration is quite phenomenal in itself. You know, it's got some really interesting aspects to it. Look at that writing. I can't. Every time I look at it, look at that C. Oh my gosh, you know, and it's an E maybe, not sure. And so we've got these beautiful, see the little lilies inside the letters there, inside that. This is just all inside a letter. Fantastic and amazing. But the writing itself is perfect. Look at it. Look at that. Perfect straight lines, perfect gaps between each line. I mean, amazing, really. And there's page after page after page. Well, forget about hours. It's estimated, are you ready now? It's estimated that it took 25 to 30 years to be written, because after exhaustive study, they've decided the powers that be, that the uniformity of it all, the uniformity of the writing style, the words used, the spacing, the whole 9 yards, the artistry through it, the pressure of the pen, all of that stuff. More modern scholars have determined that it was written by one man. That's it. End of story. So you are talking 25 to 30 years. So that's a lifelong mission. It's a job. But you must be pretty determined to spend that much of your life doing that. Pretty determined. There's a lot of stuff about why a man would do that, but he was in a monastery. So, what else did he have to do? But here we go. We've got this is after the devil, and we've got these invocations, the conjurations. Sorry. Now, in it, the evil is addressed in the magic words Puton, Puperon, Dilanx, Selmagus, Meton, Ardon, Lardon, Asson, and Catulon, with accompanying signs of the cross. The next two conjurations are feverish states. That's you're using a magic spell to get rid of a fever. And one of them apostrophizes the 7 evil sisters of Satan. Now, I had never heard of the 7 evil sisters of Satan prior to this. And they are also expelled from a servant of God through the invocation of various events in the life of Christ, as well as angels, the Holy Virgin, John the Baptist, the evangelists, the apostles, the prophets, and the various saints. Thank you. One of the important things to look at here is the reason they used a thing that was done historically that was amazing, a miracle, or the events themselves were considered to have a lot of power in medieval time. So part of your spell would always include what somebody else had done that was really awesome. Basically, which is really, really interesting as well, because I talk a lot about energy and how it doesn't matter that you misunderstand. The energy that's carried is actually the energy of ages, if you like. And so if they've got the story right and there's Jesus walking on water and then they're using that as part of their invocation against something else, for them, their belief in that and then their retelling of that story empowers them. And I believe that with every fiber of my being. If you think about it yourself, if you can go into your own mind right now and think of a story that's phenomenal, it could be the guy that, and how people get hooked on them. These things go viral in a modern world. The guy with no arms and legs that went around the world raising money for unfortunate people. When we look at those stories, we feel quite strong. It wasn't our achievement, but we feel the strength of human nature. We feel the strength of the act. And then if you bring that into your verbal environment, if you say out loud, this guy did that and I want this to happen, so you're following your spell, your conjuration, your invocation, after this empowering moment, there's a confidence, there's an energy that you can put out into that is quite phenomenal. They were a little bit, or he, them, they, whoever wrote the original spells, were a little bit obsessed with nails. I've got to say, it's a little bit interesting, but whatever. In the second formula, the evil one, this is the exorcism one, bloodthirsty Dino, the Flintstones was all I could think of, who has 150 talons, is adjured and commanded not to harm his victim, but to sleep like a yearling lamb. 2 of the magic spells concern theft. This type, known from both Jewish and Christian magic, one prescribes how to catch a thief with the aid of a medium, that is a virgin, unblemished youth of either sex. His nails are to be anointed with the 13 drops of oil, and he will then espy the thief in the glistening oil. The other informs us that in order to see in a dream the theft which has happened, one must hold a letter in one's left hand, invoke God by his holy name, as well as the archangels, and conjure the evil spirits to go home and sleep. And this is so you can see the theft as it happened and therefore know when, how, who, what, etc. Fascinating thing to have in a book of this nature, really fascinating. Peter Credo, Lord Ni Ifu, also against fevers, fexes, which I looked up as Latin for these. Drex, which I couldn't find because there were pages of names, and of course artifacts, which was, while now we think of it as a person skilled in art, would also have been artifice, which is lying and cheating, right? And then Dino, blood thou drinkest, and flesh thou eatest, and in blood thou washest thyself. Collar tempus, but gather 150 fingernails. I'm like, what? 150 fingernails / talons, and lie down in one place like a yearling lamb. Sleep now and always, and in all perpetuity. Amen. I mean, where do you get 150 fingernails? Experiment with a boy's nails through which a theft is perceived. First, this is the actual writings, by the way, from the Gigas, from the book, from the Devil's Bible. Experiment with a boy's nails, very, very, very preoccupied with that, through which a theft is perceived. First thou shalt take a virgin, unblemished boy, and put him in a shadowy house. I mean, it sounds sus, right? Turn the boy's face westwards and stand opposite him facing eastwards, and colour the boy's nail with, it's got TBs, so some areas they couldn't interpret, drops of oil. Put the thumb to the flame of a candle, and thou shalt recite these names over the boy's nails. Afriel, Janiel, Janifriel. I conjure you by Alpha and Omega, by the living Lord, ruler of heaven and earth, that ye come and show yourselves in this boy's nails, and delay not in fulfilling the promise. Whew. Make 2 cartulas, tie one to the ear, hold the other in the left hand. Tie one to the ear and the other to left hand. The cartulas are a little parchment that get rolled up. So you must write this down. You must write down what you need to know, I suppose. Pretty phenomenal stuff going on here, but they're genuine spells. They're not a prayer. They're not an invocation of God, which essentially is a prayer, is a spell in itself. It's quite a phenomenon that we can't really work past and ignore, that these things were written into this by monks in monasteries. Let's not pretend otherwise. There've always been comments. I like my ears, so I won't tie anything to it, says Kathy. Pretty good idea, I reckon. But if you had parchment, well, I just find that it doesn't even, it goes on. That's not the whole spell. That's just a little bit. They go on and on. Look at the size of those pages, There's also, this is the guy that wrote, this is Saint Isidore, by the way, who wrote Isidore's etymology, which of course is also word for word written in the Devil's Bible. Hiya, Gigi. Who more than a millennium after he lived is regarded as the patron saint, would you believe it or not, of the internet. Did you know that? Saint Isidore is the patron saint because he had a mission, and he decided to attempt to record all universal knowledge of his time in the 7th century, by the way. And of course, that's what sort of things like Wikipedia try to do. That's what Encyclopedia Britannica try to do. They're not about just history. They're about collecting knowledge and recording it and collecting it, recording it. And so he did this well. All of his work was copied and written into the Codex Gigas. So very, very interesting. And that's him there, Saint Isidore, and the book he wrote, Isidore's Etymology, is considered a very important work, which offers a bit of a look at history. Some pages of the Devil's Bible are thought to have been removed, and no one knows what happened. Now, again, I've read articles over the years that say that they were ripped as it was thrown out a window, and this happened and that happened. But according to the Swedish National Library, nobody's got any idea of when they were taken, which was clearly a very long time ago, or why. So it's entirely possible those pages held even more information that somebody at some point didn't want shared. It's something that's done, isn't it? Let's rip out the bits we don't want shared as if they never were. This book's history, though, is pretty well travelled, as it is well maintained, so you never know, somebody may have needed a little toilet paper while it was on their travels. animal skin after all, right? You never know. Just saying. It's a possibility. We can't take things too seriously. The bearded man is in this picture. He's standing here. I'll make him bigger so he's easier to look at. He's the only portrait in this. Look at that. Every time I look at the writing, I'm just flabbergasted all over again. It's a perfection of it. And this is this man here. There he is. And, of course, he is not identified in any inscription. He's in the margin, which contains the beginning of the Antiquities, which is the Antiquities is the history of the Jewish people from the beginning of the world, 66 A.D., as they understood it to be. It was a popular work that was read throughout the Middle Ages. So the Antiquities is what it was called. He copied that as well, and it recorded the Jewish wars. And look at that. If I put a hat like that on Roger, they could be brothers. Well, yes. Go make him one out of paper, Good fun. So this is a very interesting thing that it was only the only person who's drawn in here. Tinfoil hat. He probably already owns one of those. And this is in red, by the way. Just amazing stuff. I think they would have only had quills too back then. I'm not sure, but I'm guesstimating that they would have only had quills. So we put him back where he belongs. Now, it's as the only portrait of a person in the whole of the Codex. It's thought that because it's at the beginning of the Antiquities that it's actually a picture of Flavius Josephus, who lived in the 1st century and wrote the actual Antiquities. The man is wearing a pointed hat, and this was a common convention in medieval art for showing Jews. So it's to say that this is a Jewish man. As Josephus was a Jew, the man is most likely his portrait because it's at the beginning of the chapters that copy his work. So because it was the only one put in there, even though he did record the works of others, clearly he held this man in high esteem if he bothered to draw a picture as well at the front. It's followed by black capital letters that lead into the text, and the initial is red-edged with dark red and decorated with spirals on a blue background. The spirals are red and green, and yellow with stylized leaves and bunches of grapes, and I didn't find that particular picture, so there we go. And then it goes on to Bible pages. Here we go. Look at that. Whoa, so gorgeous. Now, this is the beginning of Ezekiel, by the way, which is the Bible part. Here you go. I think I could look at this forever. You can go and look at every single page, by the way. Go along to the Swedish library. They've actually got a digitized version of it. And you can go and read, if you wish to, the English translation. Look at this. So pretty. For anybody that's listening, you can pop along to energytherapies.intuitalks.com and you'll find the archive if you want to have a look at the pictures, or pop along to the Swedish National Library online and you'll be able to see it there. Just put in the Codex Gigas and it will and Swedish Library, it will come up for you. They have excerpts. They've got anything you could possibly want. There's introduction to Daniel written in red and underlined in yellow. There's certain prologues that's an item before the actual writing that do not appear in modern translations of the Bible, by the way. So nobody knows if they were originals or if they were in fact added by the monks themselves, or himself, I should say. There's a calendar in there, which is in itself pretty phenomenal. This is it. And this picture is the calendar of the numbers in the first column and the letters in the second are a guide to the date of Easter, by the way, which varies from year to year. Obviously, we know that, but he's recorded it here, and I'm just going to make that bigger again. Here we go. Look at that. These are all the dates of Easter, year after year, which is likely to be calculated or added because he's working on it for 25 years he could quite possibly have added it. Look at that, just uniform, perfect, absolutely perfect. The numbers and letters in the columns 3 and 4 show days of the months. That's column 3 and 4, days of the months. And then you go on to the 5th column of the names of the saints in capital letters. The names of the saints in capital letters. So that looks a little bit mixed up to me, but then that could be them over here. Hard to see. Not the best picture, I guess. And capital letters which are commemorated on particular days. So we have saint days. They've always had saint days. And you can see, though, look here. Look at the word up here. October, not April or March. October. Can you see that, everybody? October. So clearly that's changed quite significantly over the years, the date of Easter. The surrounding smaller names are usually Bohemians, all of whom were dead, including historical figures and important local ones, some of whom were probably benefactors to the monastery where the Codex Gigas was made. And the names of monks and nuns are all recorded. The calendar in the Codex is unusual for its date in that every day has entries for its time. They didn't do it that way. It is also unusual for including the names of local figures. The system of numbering the days is peculiar for modern readers, but it is easy to understand here as the first line corresponds to the first day of the month and the last line the last day. So very, very powerful thing to have a look at, a very strong document. The layout of this book actually is pretty interesting, as we have the Old Testament, which is what starts it off, followed by the 2 historical texts, works, which reference the antiquities and the Jewish war, which is then followed by the various medical texts. There are a variety, known as the Art of Medicine, by the way. The actual text was written already, like all of these. Somebody else had written the originals, and the medical part of it was called the Art of Medicine. And as I said earlier, written by a number of authors or compiled by a number of authors from the early part of the CE, the Christian era, current era, which is, quite fascinating. But then it's followed by the New Testament, so like the Bible itself is broken up between the Old and the New Testament with these works that are more current, if you like, that are more modern. But wait, there's more. The last of the long works is a Chronicle of Bohemia by Cosmas, I'm not sure, from Prague, somewhere around 1045 he wrote it, and this is the first history of Bohemia, and as such it's a very important work. Although it's very subjective, as was the want of historians of the day, they would take, this is naughty, but the medieval guys did it, and I think we've got a bit of that still exists today when it comes to writing out history. They don't necessarily see themselves as just recording history, but their opinion to go with it, and skipping bits that they didn't like would not be out of the way. But there's an added thing there. They would take excerpts that were already written by others and incorporate them in their own work. But there was also a belief that you should change it, that it shouldn't be a repeat of something that was already written. So here's that sort of Chinese whisper thing, isn't it? That little bit of a change, and over 500 years or 1,000 years or 2,000 years, it can be significantly different to the original. Add to that, scholars were usually high up the food chain and would have political agendas of their own. They may have to please somebody. If you've got benefactors, you may have to make it look good for them because they're coming along and they're reading this. Don't you misunderstand that at all. And then, there are also, they're not impervious to inclusions or exclusions to suit their own opinions and political affiliations on top of that. Nevertheless, it still carries a lot of value, and it's all you've got, right? All you've got is somebody's written record. There are some short texts in the manuscript. The first, before the picture of the heavenly city, is a work on penitence, how to be penitent. The second, after the devil portrait, is on exorcising evil spirits. The last important short work is a calendar, an actual calendar containing a list of the saints' local Bohemian persons on the days on which they were commemorated. And there is also one lost work on leaves that have been cut out of the manuscript. The Rules of St. Benedict, the Essential Guide to Monastic Life, written in the 6th century, and many scholars since its public appearance have noticed that the picture of the heavenly city, which we had a look at earlier, let's go have a look at that heavenly city just one more time. Hang on a minute. Let's get that back up. Where is it? Heavenly city. There it is. Now, scholars have noticed this heavenly city doesn't have any people in it. Now, take that how you will, but I will mention it since they mentioned it and seem to be quite interested. There are a lot of scholarly articles, very dry, very boring, trying to determine why a monk in a monastery who took 25 years to do this would draw a picture of the city of heaven without people in it. Why there's no people in it? Nobody understands that. It's a fascinating thing. The most important book of Christianity is the Bible. The other texts in the Codex Gigas were carefully chosen to accompany it because together they provided information about Jewish history, Josephus, universal knowledge, Isidore, medicine and local histories, Cosmas, as it was written in Bohemia. That was the name of the place, by the way, yes, where the word Bohemian comes from. That's in Czechoslovakia at a time when King Wenceslas reigned. And yes, it's the same, good King Wenceslas. And everybody sings about, or one of them, because there was a King Wenceslas for a couple of 30 years in a row. Or which one, I'm not too sure that one radiates to. And he would have looked out on the snow, and it would have been deep and even. Back in the day, today maybe not so much with cars and things. But he married a German bride, and so there was a large-scale German immigration, and the language that was originally spoken in the area was Romani, and this was largely lost basically by the extermination of many of the speakers in the concentration camps in World War II. Good. I'm glad to be of service. Since Kathy says she's going to have that song stuck in her brain now, I haven't heard anybody sing it for years and years, and I think it's because nobody understands what. But then I find it interesting that such a obscure royal family could find their way into a Christmas song. Pretty much, it's like they probably all had to sing it because he's good King Wenceslas, right? That's kind of interesting. So this is where the origin of the Codex was Czechoslovakia, was Bohemia, or Bohemian, I should say. And it surfaced really because the Benedictine monastery of Podliak, I don't even know how to say this word, Podliak, I don't know, Bohemia, we'll put that bit because I can say that, became financially troubled. And to raise money, the monks sold the manuscript to a monastery near Prague. And soon after that, this is where its story starts to get pretty interesting about the document itself. Soon after that, the text was in a new home, that in its new home, the monastery there failed. I'm not too sure how. That seems a bit sketchy. A few years later, the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf became obsessed with the Codex, as well as other alchemy and scripts written on the occult. But you see, it's not really occult. Mind you, medicine was a little occult back then. Not too soon after, the monk gave the Codex to him as a gift. The monks gave the Codex to him as a gift, and Emperor Rudolf became erratic and paranoid. He was declared unfit to rule and was banished by his family. And during the 30 Years' War in the mid-17th century, Swedish armies swooped in and seized it, and have housed it ever since in Sweden. So it's got it's an amazing thing that it survived, to be honest. Part of those stories come from the idea of it being the Devil's Bible, which it clearly isn't, but there's this slightly bad luck or misfortune around it. It is said, of course, that there are perhaps pages missing, or because it's got the magic in it, the spells written in it, that it contains its own energy of that. But if he was already obsessed with the Codex before he even got it, he may have been looking for that. He was nutty anyway, but he may have been looking for something in there, that would help him, something that would change his life or how he was feeling about things. 6 of the additions, there are additions in the Codex itself that record its travels, so nobody's guessing all of this. It's actually written in the Codex itself. 6 of the editions are medieval, still during that time. 1 is a note on the paste down of the upper cover, recording how in 1295 the monastery of Brumov purchased the Codex Gigas from the Cistercians of Sedlec after it had been pawned by its owners. So it had been pawned by a monastery, then bought from the pawn wherever by another monastery, which was probably a good thing, and then they sold it. So there you go. This note, which had long been concealed by a tipped-in piece of parchment, like folded over and stuck down, possibly just stuck under the weight of the thing, was uncovered by George Stevens in 18-something, before 1895, because I know he died then. In the mid-19th century, where there were religious editions, that was when it was discovered in the 19th century. There were religious editions, and interestingly, the Codex must have been trotted out as a bit of a tourist piece, with post-medieval editions being written in almost like a visitor's book fashion, acknowledging they had been to the monastery, that special people, not just anybody, had been to the monastery, but more likely they just wanted their name in a book that was clearly valuable and was going to be inspected just as they were doing many years into the future. So their names are in there as sort of like, I've been here, done that, and had a look at this Codex. So it had a reputation. It had a big reputation for its day that well-to-do, well-heeled people would traipse across the world to have a look at it, or at least traipse across the country to have a look at it. Kings sought it out. So it's quite a bizarre sort of thing that it had this huge reputation in its own time. On a final note, the writer is thought to be Herman the Recluse. And if you're writing this for 25 to 30 years, reclusive is what you must be, I would say. But he depicted, where am I? Oh, I'm in the wrong place. That's why I can't see what I need to see. Hang on, let's go there. We will be there. There we are. This is what we want. He depicted the earth as spherical. The heaven and the earth is the green one below, and the heaven is the round one at the top. Now, interestingly enough, heaven did mean sky, so it's the night sky he's depicting, even though they called it, good night, Kathy, great. Even though they called it the heavens, originally the word heaven meant just sky. It didn't mean anything else. This is quite a fascinating thing, because a full 200 years before Christopher Columbus set off on his journey, it was already well known that the world was round, which leads to some serious questions about history taught in schools and proving that humans were far from primitive without computers. But it's well understood today that Christopher Columbus knew very well that the world was round. So where did that come from? There was a flat Earth society, I guess, or group. Aristotle, as early as 322 BC, and maybe even before, argued in his writings that the Earth was spherical because of the circular shadow it cast on the moon during the lunar eclipse. So it kind of wipes out another area that is popular history, not necessarily accurate history. So next week we are looking at the Enochian tablets. Now, we're not looking at the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is a fascinating look, actually, at this puzzle of Enochian magic. The tablets are a whole different sphere. It's a system of ceremonial magic which was used and coveted by the Golden Dawn based on the invocation and commanding of various spirits. It is based on the 16th century writings of Dr. John Dee and Edward Kelly. John Dee was an advisor to Queen Elizabeth. He was her astrologer. He was, in fact, a very well-educated man who claimed that their information, including the revealed Enochian language, which was this Enochian tablets were written in a language never before seen, was delivered to them directly by various angels. So I'm very excited to bring that to you. It was an interesting read for me years ago, and I'll be very happy to revisit it. Now, this Wednesday, I had said I was going to do hand readings, but I'm going to put that back a week because I have long been thinking of reintroducing my monthly influences. So this Wednesday night, 9:30 EST, I'm going to be doing Through the Sun Signs using the tarot as a guide. And if you want to get your monthly influence, then you need to call in. I won't be doing that through the chat. So I will go through the monthly general information. You can ask about that as I go through the show. And at the end, if you would like your monthly influence, if you'd like it personally, then call in. Then we will pick up the hand readings. Now, if you want a hand reading, left or right hand, front or back is irrelevant. I'm not reading the palms, but I'm reading the shape of the hand. You can email dorothy@energytherapies.co a photo of your hand, and I will read that live on air. We will place it out there. Thank you very much for coming, everybody. And by the way, I'm very pleased to announce we've cracked the 100 on my last few shows over on Spreaker. I am now live on iHeartRadio, or not live, but I'm on iHeartRadio as a recorded show. Thank you very much for your support, and loving it, loving it, loving it. Cheers, everybody. Remember this week, don't be a part of your own problem. Ciao for now.